The air cycle machine converts high-pressure engine bleed air into low-pressure cold air. The unit may be separated into two principal components, the cooling turbine and the heat exchanger. The term cooling turbine is often used to refer to the entire assembly. The component used to regulate pressure for use in the de-ice system is called the de-ice pressure regulator. The sending unit for the de-ice pressure gauge is called the de-ice pressure transducer. The gauge in the cockpit that displays this pressure is the de-ice pressure gauge. The inflatable units mounted around the periphery of the cabin and cargo door are called door seals. The nomenclature usually referred to as cabin door seal or cargo door seal. The valve located within the door that is actuated by the door handle is called the door seal inflation valve. Various check valves are used in the environmental system. These flapper-type valves used in various plumbing are called duct check valves. The nomenclature usually includes the location of the unit, such as cold air duct check valve or fresh air fan check valve. The three units installed on the left-hand side of each nacelle to control bleed air are called the flow control system. The larger of these units is sometimes called the slave valve, flow regulating valve, or even the mass flow valve. The name mass flow valve is technically incorrect, but is sometimes still used by mechanics that worked on older Metro aircraft. The smaller valve is sometimes called the shutoff valve or master valve. The exact nomenclature used to refer to these two units varies considerably, so make sure when discussing these units that you and the other person are talking about the same item. Inline component is called the flow limiting venturi, or simply the venturi. The fresh air fan system includes a fresh air fan unit, generally called the fresh air fan, a fresh air fan relay, and within this duct, a fresh air fan check valve. Electrical control components include the switch in the cockpit and one of the nose gear position switches, which is also part of the circuit. Two heat exchangers are used in the system. The circular unit installed in the aspirator section, just aft of the engine, is called the bleed air heat exchanger. The unit that is part of the air cycle machine is also referred to as the bleed air heat exchanger or the cooling turbine heat exchanger. Both work on the same principle as an automobile radiator. Hot bleed air flows inside the core and ram cooling air flows outside the core to remove heat by dissipation. Plumbing terminology used in the environmental control system includes the following general categories. Stainless steel hardline plumbing is usually referred to as bleed air plumbing or bleed air tubes. Larger diameter aluminum tubing is referred to as ducts, usually including the type of air flowing through the unit, such as cold air duct. Clamps that secure the ducts together are duct clamps, but are often referred to as Mormon clamps. The thin aluminum washers used between many of these joints and on the hot air mixing valves are called crush washers. These units act as pressure seals. The check valves contained in some of these ducts are referred to as duct check valves. Tubing performing the same function within the cabin is usually referred to as distribution ducts, again including the type of air contained in the duct, such as cold air distribution duct. The red, flexible, wire-supported ducts used in the system are usually called skeet hoses, or skeet for short. The control units, located near each passenger seat, are called cold air eyeballs, or eyeball fittings. The outlets near the floor level are called the hot air ducts, although cold air can be made to come out of this system as well. The units that distribute air towards the pilot's feet are called the foot warmers. A control valve is called the foot warmer control. Air routed to the cockpit windows is part of the window defog system. Units that allow the dumping of the cold air supplied to the eyeball fittings is called the cold air dump valve. The handles located near the co-pilot's seat for controlling these valves are called the cold air dump valve controls. Plastic lines are also used as part of the pressurization control system. The fittings that attach these lines are often referred to by the trade name swage lock. The flexible portion of the engine-mounted bleed air tube is called the bleed air bellows. The switch unit installed on the forward pressure bulkhead is called the cabin altitude warning switch, or cabin altitude switch. Manual controls for the pressurization system include a switch that controls the cabin dump valve, and sometimes called the dump switch or dump valve switch. A mode selector valve, sometimes called the manual pressurization selector, and a manual rate control, sometimes called the manual pressurization controller. This unit, installed in the cabin door, is called the door safety valve. It is not part of, nor has anything to do with, the door seal system. It senses the slightest amount of pressurization inside the aircraft and locks the door mechanism to prevent opening while pressurized. Filters used in the pressurization system include a cabin pressure filter that connects to the controller, an outflow valve filter that is located on the outflow valve itself, and a filter installed in the pressurization controller itself. Pressurization system indicators include the cabin rate of climb indicator, the cabin differential pressure indicator, often called the cabin altitude indicator, and a cabin altitude warning light in the annunciator panel. This unit is referred to as the pneumatic relay, and sometimes called the outflow valve relay. The unit installed in the instrument panel that provides automatic control of the system is called the pressurization controller, or simply the controller. The primary valves used in the pressurization system are the outflow valve, located on the aft pressure bulkhead, and the emergency dump valve, located on the forward pressure bulkhead. Heating system components include sensors such as the duct temperature sensors, sometimes called duct sensors. The unit in the cabin is called the cabin air temperature sensor, or cabin air sensor. Controls in the cockpit include the mode selector, sometimes referred to as the auto manual selector, and the auto temp control, sometimes called the cabin air temp control. The unit that houses the cabin air temp sensor also contains the electronic control portion of the system. It is therefore properly called the temperature system control and cabin air sensor unit. It is most frequently referred to as either the control unit or cabin air sensor. The cabin air sensor is also used to provide a signal for the cabin air indicator, so that the pilot may easily determine the temperature of the passenger cabin. The valves and components that prevent the turbine and water separator from freezing are referred to as the turbine anti-ice system. The unit mounted on the wing rib is the turbine anti-ice system pressure regulator. The unit mounted in the outlet duct is called the turbine anti-ice system temperature sensor, or sometimes the master valve. The unit that controls the hot air entering the turbine is called the turbine anti-ice mixing valve, or the turbine anti-ice system slave valve. The vacuum system itself is often referred to as the suction system. Names of the components in the system are sometimes preceded by the term vacuum or suction. The unit in the left-hand wing root is the vacuum regulator or suction regulator. This unit also incorporates a filter, often called the vacuum filter. The unit that creates the vacuum is called the air ejector, or sometimes called the vacuum ejector. The indicator in the instrument panel is either the suction or vacuum indicator. The sending unit, located in the left-hand wing root, is the vacuum warning switch, or low suction warning switch. This unit controls an amber annunciator low suction light. This unit is called the water separator. The fitting and pipe extending out through the aircraft skin is called the water separator drain. The valve within the unit is the water separator bypass valve. The fabric-like covering inside the unit is called the water separator sock.